everyone. Matt Canning here with bodybuildingpro.com, here at the 2012 Europa in Orlando, Florida. I'm with somebody who needs no introduction because I think if you either know him, if you don't know him from his supplement line, Gaspari Nutrition, you'll know him as a pro bodybuilder, and that's Rich Gaspari. I have to say I'm personally motivated by Rich. Rich, we both are Italian, first generation. We both are about the same height. We both have a son and a daughter with the same name, and sometimes you want to inspire to somebody you think you can be like. And I'm not that naive. I didn't have a 700-pound squat when I was 17, and I'm not going to probably do a lot of the things you do, but you're still a very inspirational person to me. And your career, you were extremely successful. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Back in 1984, you won the Mr. Universe contest at 21. This got posted yesterday on bodybuilding.com, and people are just, it doesn't even make sense how you could be at that level at that age. One of the criticisms that some people said is that you didn't have the genetics for bodybuilding. But what do they mean when they say genetics? You were, first of all, so thick and so conditioned at that age. What do you think they were referring to when they said that you were falling short of some of the, like Lee Haney and everything? What did that mean, genetics?
Basically, when they're talking about genetics, they're talking about structure. If they're saying about having optimal structure for, someone to win Mr. Olympia, you have to have a very wide clavicle and a very small waist. So I didn't have that super wide clavicle, and I didn't have a narrow clavicle, say like a Larry Scott. My clavicle was as wide as some of the other Mr. Olympias, like a Franco Colombo. But when people were saying that, they were more looking at structural. I was able to, like you said, at 17, squat over 700 pounds, bench 500 pounds. My biggest weights in squats were like over 875, when I was 20 years old. Not many bodybuilders got as lean as me, and I was the first bodybuilder to get striated glutes. And a lot of people, when I got into the condition I was in, it was ahead of bodybuilding times, where people could get like that. So it was funny because someone like Lee Haney was winning, but everybody was trying to look like me.
Well, Rich, I was very impressed with your conditioning and your size in 1987. You came second. It looked like you, and Mike Christian was disappointed with fourth. You looked like you were a bit disappointed with second. You at that contest, 222, and you were as conditioned as I've ever seen you, really. Now, in 1988, you were 209.5 in the weigh-ins, and you said 212. I didn't know that you said you weighed a bit more on stage.
Well, what happens is the weigh-ins, you're still, carb loading. So you're going into the, to the weight, which is like over a day before the show. So you continue eating. By the time I got on stage, I gained a couple pounds. So I was about 211, 212 by the time I got on stage.
And 10 pounds lighter than 87. Your waist was smaller. I'll grant that. Structurally, you could argue that you looked a little bit more aesthetic. But you were not, in my opinion, you were not harder. In 87, you're 24 years old, and you were as hard as I had almost ever seen you, and as big. But I guess if you want to have, that aesthetic, a little bit more aesthetic look, you did what it took, but you retained your second place. After that, in 1989, you won the Arnold Classic, but I guess that's when your streak of second place sort of stopped. Do you feel that the judging that they later were comparing you against previous versions of yourself? They were holding you to a standard that you had set for yourself and everybody else?
I mean, it was a combination of both. One of the things that I started getting injuries earlier. I was having back problems, disc problems between both my neck and my lower back. That affected my performance and getting myself into shape. I was the type of guy that consistently competed every year and never took a break. And I think it caused me to burn out a little bit. So yeah, I started placing lower, and I took a little break and tried to make a comeback. But mentally, I was like just not as into it as I was, and then that's when I ended up changing careers.
Well, and maybe even for the better in a sense. Like you were saying in Ironman magazine that Lee Haney now looks to you for advice in business, and you are basically #1 for that. So like you may have been second place, but #1 at the Arnold, and pro world champion, and now basically the top private brand in the industry, and still growing, right?
Well, that's the thing. I look at I'm not just a bodybuilder with a product line. I'm actually a businessman that happened to be a bodybuilder. And it's funny because with my company, we'll be able to really get the younger generation to know who Rich Gaspari was as a competitor. And we built a whole new fan base. So I have fans that are in their 40s and 50s, but then I have fans that are teenagers that really appreciate what I've done. So now that's why they'll look at what I did in my competitive days, and they see me today that I'm still in shape, and I just did a photo shoot to show people I can do covers still today, even though I'm this busy CEO that's traveling around the world, running a company with a family. So I try to show people that you know, you can do it if you really try.
And Rich, I want to go back for a second there. You said that you're basically a businessman who was a bodybuilder. I was reading, actually, watching your DVD from GNV, and you were saying then that I think you were into landlording, like you were a landlord. You obviously you were doing autographs, videos, so it was always a part of what you did, I guess. And
I've always had the entrepreneur in me. I try to teach my athletes the same thing. Like when I was competing, there were no contracts with bodybuilding. I had to become my own agent. I would be the one calling up, you know, promoters that, you know, I'm available for guest posing. I would be going to Europe and doing like seminars throughout the country and, you know, making money where I didn't have a contract from Joe Weider. Joe Weider, what he said to me is like, I'm giving you the tools by making you famous in my magazines. You take advantage of it. And that's the way I really feel that the newer bodybuilders or newer generation are missing out. They basically want to depend on getting this check and not doing any work. You really have to work. And I'm fortunate to have great athletes that do the work for me. But yeah, it's been a good ride for me where I took the attributes of being, you know, the successful bodybuilder that was driven to be the best, and then took that and applied it to business, and felt that there's no limits in business. Unlike bodybuilding where they say I had genetic limitations, there is no limitations in business as long as you have the right people, and that's the thing about business, it's not all on your own, having the right people work for you, the right plan, the right vision, right brand strategies, all these things that we do, short-term and long-term goals that I do as a businessman, I can continue growing.